Welcome to Busy Bee Woodworking. Today we're going to show you us building and assembling a lofted bed for my youngest child. Now this is the second time I've built this bed, so I'm going to share with you little tips and quick tricks to make it a little bit more accurate and a little easier process. So here I just break down all the sheets down to dimensional sizes, and all these can be found actually from the Lowe's bed design. Pretty much I took it from there with a few modifications. Now that we have all the sheet goods cut down and labeled, what we can start doing is making the detailed cuts. The first one here is on the entry leg, and it's where the entry point from the staircase into the bed goes. Now keep that scrap piece because you'll need it a little bit later on. But what I just did is I just round over the edges with a router and clean up and sand to make sure everything's nice and smooth. Just a quick tip though, you'll only want to round over with the router the outside edge. Now here I'm just finding the center point, putting a slight pre-drill hole in there and making essentially a compass out of a scrap piece to make a nice line so I can cut this radius with the jigsaw. And this is just the little entry and exit point on the bottom where kids can kind of crawl around and play. Now that the cut is complete, all you're going to want to do is take a sanding block and clean it up a little bit, and you'll want to round over both the outside and inside edges. Now these are the legs that go on the sides, and what I just did was I used my table saw to make the straight cut and then just traced pretty much a quart can, make a nice round over edge, cut it with a jigsaw, and from then on I had a nice piece to trace. Now to make the handrail, what you're just going to need to do is find that point, bring it on in there, drill the hole, and make the compass essentially like you did for the side piece, but a little bit larger radius. It'll give you a nice cut-off piece, and all I did was come and finish that off with a jigsaw. And then we moved on to the stairs here, and these are pretty much 8-inch wide stairs, so I was able to just kind of trace those out, come to the table saw, make the cuts as far as I could, and then I can come back later and finish up cutting off the stairs with the jigsaw. Now at this point, pretty much all our cuts are finished. So now it comes down to actually joining the pieces together and starting the construction of the bed. I decided to go with pocket holes rather than the simple butt joints like in the Lowe's design. I thought it just gave a more secure and stronger joint overall. Also something that's not necessary but I found quite handy and helpful were these square clamps that I picked up from Rockler. Just makes sure the pieces are nice and square and helps with assembly. Now here you can see we're putting the stair faces on first rather than the tops, and that's the way we cut our pieces so it'll fit properly, so make sure you do that. Also I just pretty much glued and tacked all these pieces into place, and that's well enough and secure. But this last piece here on the base, people tend to grab that when they're moving the bed around. So I decided to come back and actually pre-drill and put in a few screws there just to give a little bit more secure attachment. Yeah, it can hold some weight. Now we're coming to the assembly of the side pieces, and once again we're just going to attach the legs to the side pieces using a simple pocket hole joint. moving on to the two headboard pieces. The one needs the cutout so the kid can come through. So that's why I use that scrap piece that I kept from later on. This gives me kind of a nice layout so I can make sure that the arcs match, and it gives a nice little transition so the kid has a nice little area to come through without having to go over a rail. And it's just appeasing to the eye so it lines up well. But these are simply just screwed right into the side piece. And here's a little jig I made up so the 4 bolts that go from the leg into the rails are all in the same placement across the board, and each one. So all I did was I went in there a little bit just to make enough marks so I can see where I drill. And then I hold a scrap piece on the back side while I drill it in, and that way I make sure I don't get any blowout. Here's a little money saving tip. All I did was take a 2x4, cut off the rounded edges, and then split it in half. And this is a nice rail so my slats have something to secure and screw it into. All I did was attach this to the rail system just with some tack, glue, and then I come back with screws to secure it. Now, depending on the finished look you're looking for, you can do anything from staining this to leaving it with just a clear coat, but I decided to paint it and put 1 coat of primer and 2 coats of top coat. Now here's the bed shown with the final coat, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add accent pieces with a stencil I made. I use a beverage case because there's a wax coating on it, and that way when the spray paint is used over and over again it can hold up without deteriorating and falling apart. But it's a nice cheap way to make your own. Now in my kids' beds I decided to carpet it, so I added just carpet padding and then carpet over top and used a staple gun to staple it down. And then I secured it to the side rail, handrail that we made earlier, just by pre-drilling and putting some screws in there. Now that we got the bed put together, now we can put the slats in there and make sure you screw those down and secure them to that rail that we have on the inside. Now when it comes to attaching the side piece to the staircase that we came up, all you have to do is you put the bed up. I used some clamps to hold it tight, and then I took measurements just to make sure I'm not drilling through where there's no staircase. But I just pre-drilled and added screws, and then that way the staircase is now secured to the side of the bed. And there you have it, 2 happy campers. Now if you liked the video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up. Please subscribe, and as always, thanks for buzzing by.
Whoa! Dad, good job.
Thank you.
I was just checking out my bed and see if it's ready.
Not yet.
Okay.